Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond, in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. We love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south, in the land of the free and the home of the brave, on a beautiful May the 28th, 2019, Grando Deportes, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Charlton, it's hot down here the day after the Memorial Day weekend. I don't think everybody's put out their barbecue grills, and we got a little excessive heat going on down here. So, I mean, we need to give a shout-out to everybody who put the grills out, Charlton. But on a more serious note, I want to once again, Charlton, remind people of the great veterans that have served this country that we celebrate Memorial Day for. And I want to introduce everybody once again to the Army Crisis Hotline. That number is 800-273-8355. If you know of a service member, a former service member, who's in need of some help, counseling,
Yes.
direct them. 800-273-8355. We should not let these people be alone in a time of need, Charlton.
That's a very good statement, Big C. I love when you do the PSAs because it's real talk. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars. And I want to just spend a little bit more time on what you just said about veterans and Memorial Day, Veterans Day, and all these, the 4th of July, and all the things that talk about freedom and how we're blessed. We're blessed and highly favored to be able to be in the land of the free and the home of the brave. And as a person of color, you know, I understand what it's like having access to stories of grandparents when we were not always free. I ask anyone to ever look at some of your own children, grandchildren, and imagine a world in where they had no freedoms, but you got yours. It's amazing how we can share those things, Big C. And when you talk about some of our military veterans and people who've served this country and given their life, and they did so much for all of us, when they're in trouble, they need some place that they can call and say, I need some help. And I'm glad that you bring it up, because it's that number's out there, but I didn't know about it until you said it, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, it is very important that we all, as Americans, lend hands to those veterans out there. There are 19 million veterans in America. And many of these veterans, Charlton, run underneath the radar because they have fallen off the grid.
Yeah.
But if you know of someone who has served in our military service, Charlton, they all need some sort of help. They may seem great on the surface, just like when we look at a piece of furniture.
Yeah.
But you don't know if there's any damage underneath.
Right.
And anytime you can assist a veteran, Charlton, in any kind of way, never hesitate. Don't just say thank you for your service. It's how can I service you?
Yeah. I think that's wonderful. I'll never forget, just, you know, growing up, there used to be this sign of a Native American man, and he was standing, I guess, at some national park, and some good old boys came by and they threw some trash out of a pickup truck, and he had a tear coming down of his eye. I was a little boy when I saw that, but this land belonged to him, and even though it was about trash being thrown in their land, and it broke his heart, it's the same thing that a lot of our veterans and military people think about too. Because oftentimes, Big C, you know, I've been just in certain cities lately, and you could go almost any downtown, and you'll see someone who's homeless on the street. And sometimes it's because they lost their mind, not because they don't want to work. And oftentimes they've served this country, and that's the price they pay. But if I didn't know there was a number to reach out to, I'm sure they didn't know it as well, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, there's many people that don't understand that there's numbers to reach out to for help, not just for military, but many civilians in society. But our military is something that we should always, as a society, want to help and find ways to help. And you know, there's services out there that the military offer. But when these people are homeless and they don't have a way to contact,
Right.
how do they know about these services, Charlton? They don't have a television where they can see these PSAs.
Yeah.
And even the local television stations, Charlton, don't run these numbers enough on the air. They should be on every news broadcast, Charlton. They should come out in every commercial. A television station is for the people.
Yeah.
Those are public broadcasting stations, Charlton. They're funded by the government. Yet the government doesn't do enough to let the fallen military people that have come back to this country, Charlton, that have fallen through the cracks, they don't let them know that there's aid out there for them, that there's help out there for them. We can talk about sports till the cows come in,
Yeah.
Charlton.
Yeah.
But we need to also aid our military veterans, Charlton. 19 million of them in America. 19 million veterans. We don't have that many athletes in America.
No.
But we have 19 million veterans that made it safe for those athletes to be able to play sports in this country.
You know, it's interesting. I love that you brought it up, Big C. Very prescient. That's why I call you the mystic. I was watching many of our sports brethren today, just the day after Memorial Day holiday, where people were saying their thoughts and prayers, even crying, some people crying because they had lost someone in a service, having flags, and all the stadiums were just doing great celebrations. And then today, it's as if it happened 6 months ago, because no one talked about it. It's back to business as usual. And I think that's how our country becomes callous, because we're used to looking at what's going on right now. Like, what have you done for me
Charlton,
lately?
you know, when you look at those sports shows, they want to talk about the dysfunctionality of a sports team, of the management in a sports team. They want to talk about the dysfunctionality of millionaires.
Billionaires,
not
yeah.
people who have
Yeah.
who have served this country, who have dysfunctionalities, Charlton,
Yeah.
because of mental illness that they've suffered in defending this country.
Yeah.
Those millionaires didn't suffer any mental disabilities, Charlton, defending their jobs with these sports teams. But these military personnel, Charlton, have suffered debilitating injuries physically and mentally, Charlton.
Yeah.
And we need to find a way to help them, not just worry about a sports team. We know that sports is going to go on regardless.
Yeah.
But we need to help these former military personnel find an easier path through life.
Yep.
And that's what the number is for, Charlton.
Yeah.
To reach out and help them. 800-873-8355. 800-873-8355. Even if you think you might know someone, make the call. Let someone know where there might be someone that needs help, Charlton.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And it's just amazing how we can talk about it. And you brought up this point how there are manufactured stories. I remember the Masters, and Jim Nance was doing his thing, and he was reading one of the statements by CBS Sports. They were trying to say, go to CBS Sports and get your real sports, and we don't have manufactured arguments. It's like you and I getting on a program and yelling at you about why I think one team's better than the next. We're not shooting jump shots, Big C, but some of these programs, they become that way. Like let's have these fake fights, these fake arguments, and here you are saying to reach out and get some help for veterans. That's why Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, and I really believe that with all my heart. So congratulations for all the people that had their celebrations and was able to think about someone that made this country safe, but still think about people who have needs today. I want to take you, and one more thing I want to say, because I was watching the news even this morning, and I think yesterday they were saying there's about 25 million people in harm's way of a storm in the Midwest, and they talked about the Arkansas River, and they also talked about, you know, different parts of Missouri, and then I even think they were saying in Iowa, but Indiana too. I mean, it's amazing how many people are affected by a storm, Big C. So we just hope that you check on your neighbors. Don't assume that people are okay. Big C, why is that so important? I know we want to watch the game. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, it's about reaching out and touching your neighbors, you know, being cordial and friendly with them. You know, and just like, you know, you're getting these warnings on the news about the horrific weather here in the United States, even though the administration says there's no such thing as global warming that's causing all these tornadoes and floods, Charlton. They think about it, how they're talking about the civilians out there, and they're not mentioning the veterans that may be in harm's way, Charlton. Think about a lot of those veterans who have debilitating injuries, Charlton, that are no longer mobile.
Yep.
They have lost limbs, can't walk, and they're in the path of a lot of this horrific weather that we're having here in this country, Charlton.
Yeah.
So not only do you want to stay in touch with your neighbors, but you want to find a veteran who may be disabled and may need that extra care as far as getting to safe ground, Charlton.
Yeah, I think that's very important. So I really appreciate that, Big C, and hopefully people can heed that warning. And speaking of reaching out to people, you talked about it before just yesterday how the NHL playoffs, we're hoping we can see 7 games. But sometimes when you watch a fight, you can tell someone's at a disadvantage. And St. Louis, as much as I would love to see them bring some hope to that city outside of the Cardinals struggling over the last couple of years, the Rams going back to California, they really haven't had the chance. And then many moons ago, the Cardinals left to Arizona. So here's St. Louis, and they rally behind the Cardinals, and they rally behind the Blues. But the Blues, you said yesterday, they had to jump on Boston early, and they did, because Boston was sitting up in a warehouse for a couple of weeks, not having to play anyone, and they've been starting slow. And that's what Rask said. He said, well, we did start a little bit slow. We had to get the feel of the game again. And so I thought very impressive of you, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, they did. St. Louis went out and attacked the way that they should. Boston had all that time off. They were rusty. They got up 2-0, Charlton, and they played a miraculous first quarter.
Yeah.
But 22 minutes into this game, Charlton, all of a sudden Boston got their legs back.
Yeah.
And they knew that they needed to become aggressive against the St. Louis Blues, and they did, Charlton. They attacked them, and all of a sudden you found the Blues in a lot of penalty situations. I guess they thought, the Sharks were still playing.
Yeah.
But you can see the stem of the tide in this game, Charlton, as Boston took control of this game physically against St. Louis, and they just, drove them into the ice and took a commanding lead, Charlton, and won this game 4-2.
Yeah.
But you feel for St. Louis in many ways, Charlton. This is St. Louis's 4th trip to the Stanley Cup Finals, the first one since 1970.
Yeah.
They are 0-13 now, Charlton, in Stanley Cup final games. We know what Tuukka Rask is. When it comes out to shut out, to closing out a series, Charlton.
Yeah.
He has been dominant in closeout games, Charlton. In his last series, Charlton, in closeout games.
Yeah.
He's only allowed, Charlton. He's only allowed 93 shot. He's blocked 93 of 96 shots.
Yeah.
Charlton. You think about that. He's given up 3 goals.
Yeah.
3 goals. And so right now, St. Louis, I think they might be a little demoralized after this game 1, Charlton, being up 2-0.
Yep.
And not being able to score the next 2 periods, Charlton, against Boston.
Yeah. I'm telling you, when you're outshot 32-12 in the final 2 periods of a game 1, and you lose 4-2, you were up. You really gave it 4 unanswered goals. And again, St. Louis, I've always heard that you don't really start a series until you can win a game in someone's backyard. Well, they had an opportunity to come in and jump on Boston, but Boston found a way to come back. I want to just get you to a side note of what I noticed that was going on. Bob Kraft was in the arena last night, and everybody has a right to do whatever they want to do, and I think he's shown people that it's not what you really do in life, it's what you can buy your way out of in life. Now, I just contrast that to the Central Park 5 thing that I saw on TV just a couple days ago. And when young poor black boys spent many years in prison, and DNA showed they did not do it. DNA, that thing called science. But they spent many moons in prison. And here's Kraft at a game. We know that women are being trafficked all over this country, in fact, all over the world. And I just wonder if he were a black man. There was a movie or a book back in the day called Black Like Me. And I couldn't help but to contrast and juxtapose the treatment of those young black boys in the criminal justice system to Bob Kraft. They are both accused of a crime, but one was caught on tape. The one that's caught on tape is going to be completely exonerated. The guys who were exonerated by DNA, we're told that they did it, and they lost many years of their life in the penitentiary. And I just wonder if I'm the only one that sees that, how painful that could be. What's on tape, we're told you didn't see it. What DNA says you did not do, people say, yeah, you did it. How does that make any sense, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, that's become part of Americana. If you go back a few decades to Los Angeles, when America witnessed the Rodney King beating in the streets of Los Angeles, and it was proven in court that the videotape was inaccurate, okay?
Yeah.
So this is the same scenario with Robert Kraft. You can have DNA evidence to exonerate you, but videotape evidence is unfounded, Charlton.
Yeah.
It's not accurate.
Yeah. And so just one more thing on that, because it makes me, we talk about love the veterans, and and appreciate everybody, and we all have due process. But even Bill Cosby's in prison, used to be called America's Dad. He's in prison for something that was not on tape. Something that was not on tape. And here's a guy that's on tape, and he's out. And I just wonder, for people that really wonder about, well, what is this Black Lives Matter thing? You know, they think it might be some kid downtrodden on his luck. But Bill Cosby was a very wealthy man, and I just hear that he got in trouble when he wanted to buy NBC, not when he got in trouble for stuff he was accused of doing 30 and 40 years ago. That was not on tape. That make any sense? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, there's many men that have been accused of things that's not on tape, there's no physical evidence of. It's a hearsay, his word against her word.
Yeah.
Those types of stuff. We see that play out in court all the time. But when it comes down to physical evidence, when you have exact physical evidence as far as a videotape or exact science,
yeah,
I think, society should look at that. And we can always, we say our administration has been accused of many improper deeds, and many athletes have been accused of improper deeds. But Charlton, it comes down to what the jury wants to hear and what the jury composite is. That's what it comes down to in a trial situation.
Yeah.
What's the composite of the jury? It's not about fair, guilty or innocence. It's what the composite is of the jury.
Yeah. Well, I just think it's ironic and juxtapose that to what's going on in the world when people get accused of things. And here's Kraft, and he has every right to. His lawyers were so good, they made people see what they did not see, okay? A Hall of Fame broadcaster told me, Charlton, our job is to make people believe that they did not see what they just saw with their own eyes. I think that works on a judge, too, when your wallet's big enough. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, the justice system has many different layers.
Yeah.
And when Robert Kraft can get favor, you got to understand where this scenario took place. In Jupiter, Florida. This is the land of billionaires, okay?
Yeah.
And everybody knows everybody. Everybody is a political donor down there, Charlton.
Yeah.
The president hangs out in Jupiter, Florida.
Yeah.
So when you think about the echelon of people down there, Charlton, you're going to get favor when it comes to that.
Yeah. It does buy that, and I just wanted to make that a point because I know there's still a lot of women going through things. I want to also get on to a subject that I think is this time of year. We talked about what's going on with the NHL. I think if we're going to see anything other than a sweep, then the Blues have to win Game 2. And I doubt if they will, but I hope they will, because I think it's good for hockey, especially when they were in the abyss, halfway through the season. They were the worst team, and now they have a chance to win Lord Stanley's Cup. So when you want to root for an underdog, that's part of the underdog that's out there. And I know that you love the things that are coming up once we get finished with the NBA Finals. But I got to ask you, not to beat the horse too much, but when people are trying to talk about dysfunctional LA Laker family, since when is a billionaire dysfunctional, Big C? If a billionaire is dysfunctional, meaning that money can buy a lot of things, Kraft knows that, the Lakers knows that. So what is it about our media that wants to beat up wealthy people by saying they don't know anything and that they're dysfunctional, and the poor people were never even in those rooms? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, that's how you earn your living, trying to get into a wealthy man's pocket. And the last I checked, how many teams are left playing right now in the NBA?
Yeah, just two.
Just two. And there's more media about the teams that are not playing in the finals than there is media about the teams playing in the finals.
Yeah.
I've heard last week it was the Houston Rockets, the dysfunctionality of the Houston Rockets.
Yeah.
And every week has been the dysfunctionality of the Lakers. This is the thing we're constantly hearing. Because the people that are representing the media now on these sports shows are devoid of being able to build a narrative about the teams that are left in the playoffs.
Yes.
So let's go out and attack some teams that are not even together right now, Charlton. They're on vacation. Who knows what part of the world these players are in?
Yeah.
But let's tear this down, because Magic Johnson resigned from the Lakers. All of a sudden, he became a Judas.
Yeah.
And he was tearing up the franchise. The Lakers were there before Magic. The Lakers were there after Magic.
Yeah.
There's people who own the Lakers that run the Lakers. They make the decisions. Magic didn't make the decisions. He weren't writing the paychecks.
Yes.
The Buss family was writing the paychecks. The team was dysfunctional prior to Magic showing up 2 years. Magic saw how dysfunctional it was. He left on his own terms.
Yeah.
The media could not come to grasp with that because Magic didn't give them a heads up. The media said that Magic blindsided them by leaving the Lakers because they couldn't go out and break the story. That's why the media is so pissed off with the Lakers, because no one let them break the story. The Lakers did it their own way, like Frank Sinatra.
Yeah, he did it his own way. But I want to also get your points on this. And I know there's a book called Race Matters by Dr. Cornel West. I think he's a brilliant man. And if you can hate Magic Johnson for being an ambassador for the league and for the Lakers themselves, there's a lot worse people that have been in the sports business than Magic Johnson. He's never been accused of beating up somebody. He's never been accused of harming his spouse. He's never been accused of any type of violation for anything illegal in the business. But for other black men, because I think it's really an assault on black men, and just because some black men are part of that too, doesn't mean that they're not part of it. But if you can take and tear down one of the most celebrated Hall of Famers in the history of the NBA universe, what does that say to other men when they want to ask you for the interview? And right now it's Steph Curry, he's the darling of the league. Maybe they want to say that Kawhi Leonard might be the darling, even though he's quiet, he's reticent to speak. They've always tried to tear down LeBron James. Do you find it ominous that for the most part, when they're trying to tear people down, it's the most successful black men, not the guys that are on the bench not making any waves, but may have their own issues? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, that's how you make a name for yourself in the media, is you attack the most prominent athletes out there, which a majority of them are African American.
Yeah.
I mean, if you compare that situation to, say, the New York Giants with the quarterback situation there with Eli Manning. No one beats up on Eli Manning in the press, and New York is as hard a town as there is, but no one beats up on Eli Manning in any sports talk show narrative. But people beat up on LeBron James. LeBron James has had a more successful professional career than Eli Manning has.
Yeah.
And Eli's always been in a larger market. But it just shows the narrative of sports. You gravitate to what makes you look good as a sports writer, broadcaster, Charlton.
Yeah.
If the big black athlete makes you look better and makes you seem more intelligent, then you attack him. You get no bonus points, Charlton, for attacking a white athlete who's on the downside of his career.
Well, let me ask you, even on the upside, has Magic Johnson or LeBron James ever been suspended for deflating basketballs? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, it's not about them being deflated. It's just that they're very, open people that you see them. Their image is larger than life. They've always been put up on a pedestal.
Yeah.
And when you have black athletes that have always been put up on a pedestal, you're always going to have vitriol and people trying to tear them down, Charlton. It's go back to the days of Jackie Robinson.
Yeah.
Being better than others, you had to find a reason. It wasn't just the fans who treated Jackie Robinson mean, Charlton. The sports writers treated him mean.
Yeah.
The fellow players treated him mean. This is the same thing that we've always had with dominant black athletes. Jim Brown had to go through that vitriol when he was playing, Charlton, being attacked by the media, by the players. I mean, Muhammad Ali was attacked by everybody because he stood head and shoulders above people. He was outspoken and he told the truth.
Yeah.
Even back then, they told athletes to stay in their lane. You can't say these things. And it's still been the same with athletes today, Charlton. It's not that they want to tear black athletes down. It's just they don't understand black athletes, and they're fearful of them. They're fearful of the intelligence that they may possess. And so when they come out and they're in the forefront, and they've been, monikers in society, Charlton, where they're this statuesque figure that not only socially but economically, how do you attack them? How do you knock them down?
Yeah.
You can only attack them, Charlton.
Yeah. Well, just one more thing I want to bring up. No one really tore down Aaron Rodgers for throwing his teammates under the bus. And I still got to bring up this thing with Nick Bosa. Because unless people are just ignorant, they know about all the hate and vitriol that was on the Twitter page. He said it was his friend. What good friend you have that has that type of garbage and he's still your friend? And you never denounce him until it's found out. But there's no criticism worldwide of Bosa. You would think that Magic Johnson was the one with the N-word and all that garbage on his Twitter page. It wasn't him. That was Nick Bosa. He just happened to be Caucasian. And they made it, you see how they closed the door so fast on that, Big C? They had a couple of African-American guys come out and say, it's okay as long as he can play. That make any sense, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, white media is not going to go in and tear down the guy that looks like them because they never know if he may become a superstar, and then they get the inside story with him because they're buddy-buddy.
Yeah.
They figure that black athletes are a dime a dozen, and you can always tear them down because the next one will step up. history has proven that, Charlton.
Yeah.
So you want to embrace all the white athletes. I mean, no one attacked Gordon Hayward this year with the Boston Celtics.
No.
He was a promising up-and-coming star when he was in Utah, Charlton.
Yeah.
But the minute he goes to Boston, he falls off the cart.
And it's Kyrie
no
Irving's
one
fault.
said he was any part of the Boston Celtics not ascending more. They attacked Kyrie Irving.
Yeah.
They didn't attack the guy that looked like him. Let's keep the white guy a saint. Let's attack Kyrie Irving and say that he's a cancer. When you look at the teams throughout the playoffs, Charlton, you think about Denver being eliminated. Jokic was never attacked in Denver.
No.
And he was kept as a saint.
Right.
He didn't do anything wrong. He's a tremendous player.
Yeah.
But he was never attacked like James Harden was in Houston.
Right.
Or Chris Paul. He wasn't. He wasn't attacked like Giannis in Milwaukee, Charlton. You look at the teams that were led by black players as they lost. Lillard in Portland.
Yeah.
They were all attacked by the media. Jokic was never attacked. Gordon Hayward was never attacked, Charlton.
That's a very good point. Well, that's why Big C Sports will try to keep him honest. I want to get your feeling on what's called, I think, the most enjoyable sports, and maybe even more popular than NFL. Maybe that's a stretch, but college football. I want to get your feeling. You're down south where a lot of these games are going on, and it is, especially when it comes to the top 25. A lot of Southern teams are in those top 25 polls. But what are the best college football cultures in America? And don't just stay down south, Big C, your thuds.
Is there some place other than the South Delta that they play football any place else?
Yeah.
I think, if you're looking at the best culture right now in college football, Charlton, you got to go to the national champs in Clemson.
Yeah.
You look at a team that's been there 2 of the last 4 years in a national championship game, Charlton, and the atmosphere, they feed off of their coach. When you look at the liveliness of Dabo Sweeney, who seems to be a player's coach, Charlton,
Yep.
he's having fun. His players are having fun. And you look at the fanfare that they have there, Charlton, that has to be the best culture right now in college football.
Well, wasn't it just before the national championship game, and Alabama just jumped on Oklahoma, even though Oklahoma outscored them after the first quarter? It was all Alabama. It was about Tua being the prodigal son of the college football, and how he was a can't-miss kid out of St. Louis High School in Honolulu, Hawaii. And before that, it was Hurts, whose job was replaced by Tua because he came in the national championship game against Georgia. Are you telling me one game where Clemson got the better of Alabama has made them America's favorite team now, Big C? What about the Tide? They still roll?
Well, the Tide does roll, Charlton, but when you look at Alabama's atmosphere, it's more like a business. It's like a corporation, more so than just a bunch of kids having fun. When you look at how Nick Saban manages everything there, from his press conferences on, Charlton, from the actions of the players, it's a great atmosphere for college football. But when you look at Clemson's having fun.
Yeah.
Alabama is like a corporation that you're running.
Yeah, well, I think it's a very good program at Alabama, but they remind me of how Miami did things outside of the control and the discipline under Jimmy Johnson, and I think it was Snellenberger when Miami built that dynasty team, and Erickson came on too, and they were more of Army fatigues, and they tried to be an intimidating team as opposed to a team that was run like a corporation the way Alabama is, but they had the same kind of success. Do you find that they have that same type of national presence that Miami was able to foster for a couple of decades? Big C, your thoughts?
Oh, Clemson most definitely has that. They're an ACC team also. Both of those teams are in the same conference. But when you look at the fanfare that Clemson has gained the past couple of years, especially the way they went out and dominated Alabama, and they were having fun doing it, Charlton. They just weren't, stuffy about playing the game. You could see the joy in the players, how much they appreciated each other, how much they had fun with the coach. You didn't get that feeling from Alabama.
Yeah. Well, I know that Alabama will still rise because they have the best coach, I think, in Saban. But also what Miami did, they did it under 3 different coaches. I think it was Snellenberger, and then it was Jimmy Johnson, and then Dennis Erickson. They were all competing
Actually, 4 coaches. Larry Coker won a championship.
That's right.
Down there also.
That's right. Coker also, even though we thought that was kind of given to them. But, I mean, they were dominant. I know they jumped on Ohio State down in Arizona. But if Saban were to leave Alabama, and there's always talk about the heir apparent, Miami had something that Alabama doesn't have because they had some changes between Bear Bryant and what you have now in Saban, but they never had that national dominance that Miami had back in the day, and they may never get it. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, where they are right now, Charlton, times have changed throughout the landscape of college football. There's always eras where you'll have a team that goes on a 5 to 10 year run where they have nothing but national dominance, and that's where you've seen the landscape change from Alabama to Clemson, where Dabo Swinney has put his stake in the sand, saying, this is the direction that college football is going.
Yeah.
You're bringing in the top recruits. Alabama had, that nailed down.
Yep.
Now that's starting to swing, Charlton, to other conferences.
Well, that's very true. And as we talk a little bit more about football, and I love college football, how we could talk about it now, what we're going to do is take what's called the Big C pause, and we're going to come back in just a moment. And I want to get your thoughts on how the new football compared to the older football. I think people thought football was tougher back in the day, and there's some rule changes that made it maybe not as tough now. We're going to take the Big C pause, and we'll come right back in just a moment, and we'll talk more about college football on the Big C Sports Network. All right, Big C, we are back on the Big C Sports Network, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network. You can follow Big C Sports on the iHeartRadio Network, on Apple Podcasts, on Google Podcasts. You can follow us on Spotify. You can find us on Xfinity, Comcast, as well as YouTube and Spreaker. But you can also, if you have that device in your home called Alexa, you can say, Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast, and our podcast will come up anywhere in the universe. So we thank our sponsors for their support. I want to get a feeling from you, because going back in the day of the great USC programs, and you could even say how USC was dominant under Pete Carroll, but even going back to John McCabe way back in the day, Big C, when the USC was winning championships, they even beat Alabama many, many moons ago. I don't know if you can say that is relevant now, but I think that Pete Carroll teams, one of the better games that we did not see was when Pete Carroll had USC rolling, and Florida was also dominant. I think it would have been Mark Sanchez versus Tim Tebow. In the NCAA, they chose to go with Oklahoma versus Florida. I believe they played that game in the Orange Bowl. USC had just the prior year beaten Oklahoma 55-19. And then how does Oklahoma jump back into the national championship game after they were destroyed by the Trojans? And I thought that was a way to protect the SEC, because they have a lot of voters down there. That make any sense if you would call that, Big C?
Well, the dominance of Southern football is, even with the voting when you think about the NCAA, Charlton.
Yeah.
USC was a flagship program on the West Coast, and I'll state that again, was a flagship program on the West Coast. And without USC being a flagship program on the West Coast, Charlton, West Coast football stays down. I mean, when you got to look at other programs on the West Coast is representing it, USC needs to be relevant. USC, ever since Pete Carroll has left, has been in a rebuilding process.
Yeah.
You think about the coaches that they've gone through. They've gone through Lane Kiffin.
Yeah.
They've gone through Steve Sarkisian. They have Clay Helton, Charlton. They're in a rebuilding process.
Yeah.
USC right now does not have an identity on the college football landscape. They are not relevant, and that destroys the West Coast. You look at Florida, you just spoke back. They are rebuilding, Charlton. They've actually arrived. You know, they had a 10-win season last year under Dan Mullen, who was an assistant under Urban Meyer, who came back from Mississippi State. They are back where they used to be, Charlton. USC is still light years away at the moment.
Yeah, and I know that it just takes a winning season to change that. But as we go back to the West Coast, would you believe that Stanford goes out of their way to find people that fit the culture of Coach Shaw? And, think about David Shaw and what he's done. He's probably the most successful coach in the Pac-12, I would say, really since Pete Carroll left. Even more than Harbaugh. But it goes under the radar at Stanford. Education is more important. That's the mentality of Stanford. But they still have sent more kids on to the NFL, as many as USC or any other program under David Shaw's tenure. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you think about Stanford as an academic institution, Charlton. You think about the intelligence of the players that Coach Shaw will bring into that program, and you talk about fitting his culture.
Yeah.
He has a culture unlike any other in college football, Charlton. To be a dominant program that sends players to the NFL. He has 2 offensive tackles that most likely go in the first couple of rounds next year in the NFL draft, Charlton. Not only are they dominant players, but they're intelligent, so they translate well into the NFL game. And so when you talk about the culture of a team, it's a small program on the scale of everything when you think about Stanford, Charlton. But the elite players academically that they bring in that are able to compete on the national level, Charlton, is unheralded.
And I really love what they've done. I know Kelly had it going up at Oregon, and we'll see if they can get that program back on the map. And even up at the University of Washington, they've been to the Rose Bowl, but they just seem like they're not that same program that Don James had back in the 90s when they won national championships and competed for national championships. Give me a feeling, because when we think Big Ten, we always think Michigan, we think Ohio State, Michigan State, Penn State, Wisconsin. But Iowa, that's a program. They know who they are. They take care of business. They bring in solid citizens and players. And I love what they do with that hospital with those children that are going through some issues, where the football team turns around and says hi to those young people that are having some issues. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you know, Kirk Ferentz brings in players of integrity and character every year to Iowa. And as you say, they run under the radar in the Big Ten, Charlton. But he produces solid men. It's a scandalous program that he has at the University of Iowa. You never hear about any sanctions, players being kicked off the team, Charlton. He goes out and recruits integrity beyond athletics, Charlton. And that's what you've gotten from that program at the University of Iowa. You don't hear all the things that go on at Michigan State, Ohio State, Charlton, even Penn State. Iowa is a very solid program. He brings in solid young men and makes them great citizens, Charlton.
Well, that's a very good statement by that program up in the Midwest. So give me your feeling. We cover the South. You know, you got the Florida schools, Alabama. In the West Coast, you know, USC, and the whole West Coast, but Oregon and Washington. And the Big Ten, we talk about Iowa. But will there ever be a day that you say Michigan will win a national championship, or programs like Nebraska, or even a program like Texas again? Again, Texas has won it since USC because they beat USC to do it. But when you go up that mid part of the country and you think of programs like a Texas, when you think of a program, and Texas is in a much bigger state than Oklahoma, but Oklahoma's always there. Nebraska, will they ever find their way back? In Michigan, they're nowhere near as good as Ohio State lately. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, when you talk about Nebraska, I mean, they moved to the Big Ten and found that the treading was tough going into that conference. I mean, it's been a long time since they've been competitive. You think about Michigan. This is Michigan's best opportunity, Charlton, to have a top-ranked team that stays in the top 5 in the country this year. Shea Patterson, excellent quarterback. This is his year to shine, Charlton, because down the road, who knows what Michigan will have? Who knows how long Harbaugh will stay around there? But the king of football in college, Charlton, is down in the South. Well, when you think about the resources that those universities put behind their programs, Charlton, it's all or nothing. That's what Southern college football is all about. Well, when you think about the Midwest and up north, Charlton, even the West Coast, it's almost like a secondary entity on the West Coast. Up in the Midwest, Charlton, you know, they're striving to get better. But, you know, just Southern football right now is the king. Yeah,
it is a king, Big C. So just your thoughts, and then I want to get on to something a little bit different, if that makes sense. When we think about programs, national dominant programs, and everybody has the marquee names, but we talked about how Miami has done it under different coaches. I would say even Notre Dame has been in that national championship playoff series with different coaches, whether it's Kelly or back in the days when they had the great Lou Holtz, and even Eric Parseghian. So they've been like Miami has been doing down south as well. But I think about the most loyal fan base in college football, whether it's Michigan, they play in front of 100,000. LSU down there in the swamp in Louisiana. Texas, Alabama, Oklahoma. You have Oregon, Georgia, Ohio State, Clemson, Notre Dame. But another program that I want to throw out there as being one of the most loyal programs, I would say, is the University of Washington. They've done it without winning a national championship, but it's still a very tough place to play at Husky Stadium, and it's one of the most beautiful places in college football. Big C, your thoughts?
It's a tough place to play, but when you talk about the South, you think about going down to Death Valley, playing a night game at LSU, Charlton. Nobody wishes to go down there. Not only do you have to deal with 102,000 Rutgers fans, but you got mosquitoes also. So you're being attacked in every way.
100,000 mosquitoes.
The fan base of some of these southern schools, Charlton, the loyalists, where you get fans turn out 100,000 strong every home game, and the SEC has a half a dozen stadiums. that you get that night, night out. Notre Dame, when you talk about a national fan base, Charlton, wherever you go, Notre Dame has fans.
Yeah.
They're like the Yankees. Wherever you go, there's people are going to be wearing the green and gold in the stands. That they have that national fan base, Charlton, worldwide.
Yeah.
So it's hard to compete with several of those programs. And so I'll always put LSU up there. I'll put Michigan up there, Charlton, because of the big house, 114,000 people. And LSU down in Death Valley, Notre Dame. It's hard to beat those programs.
When you think about that, if we pick one state, because there's always this competition with California, who plays better high school football? California? Is it Texas? Is it Florida? Is it Ohio? Is it Georgia? Is it whatever state? I would say, I'm going to get your feeling. I would think it's the Florida schools, because they've had multiple national championships, teams that have played multiple bowl games. When you look at their Big Five universities, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you know, when you talk about the most dominant state in college football, Charlton, it's going to be Florida. You know, you look at California. What does California have? They don't even have anybody ranked in the top 25 when you think about that.
Yeah.
You know, Texas is going to, you know, push the envelope just a little bit. But when you look at Florida and you look at the top universities down there, Charlton, you look at the University of Florida, University of Miami, you have Florida State, you have Central Florida, you have South Florida, Charlton. You have 5 universities down there, Charlton, that all have the opportunity to be ranked in the top 25 in the country.
Yeah.
That's hard-pressed to find anywhere else. I mean, you can go to Texas where you have Texas A&M, you have University of Houston, you have TCU, Charlton, as far as dominant schools. Rice really doesn't register on the radar. But you have 5 schools and 4 of them potentially that have the ability to be ranked. But when you just look at dominance on a load level, Charlton, the state of Florida has the most dominant football factories in the United States.
Well, I would agree with that, Big C. I want to throw the ball over to baseball. When you look at 2019 NCAA baseball tournament, the brackets, the regional matchups, you know, the setup play begins on the 31st of May. College World Series starts June 15th. If we go to the western part of the country, the Los Angeles Regionals, we have number 1 UCLA, number 2 Baylor, number 3 Loyola Marymount out of California, and the number 4 Omaha. And Big C, this might be shocking news, but I found somebody from California that's ranked number 1 in Euclid, UCLA. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, this is the thing that we found. You know, when you're looking at California sports, you're going to have to look at women's sports and the baseball team, because everybody else is watching.
Yeah, everybody's watching. Let's go to Corvallis, Oregon State. You know, that Nike money can build a lot of things for you. Just do it. I love Nike, but love to get Nike, you know, covering the Big C Sports Show more. Corvallis, Oregon. You have Oregon State, which has won 2 national championships in the last decade. You have Creighton, you have Michigan, and you have Cincinnati. And I just want to bring to your attention, that's 2 West Coast teams that are ranked number 1 so far, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, that's pretty prominent. And you think about UCLA, that they have the longest winning streak in men's baseball entering the tournament, Charlton, and the number 1 seed down there in their own hometown.
Yep, hometown. So Oregon State, Creighton, Michigan, Cincinnati, you got a feeling for Oregon State. What a beautiful part of the country, Big C. Your thoughts?
It is, Charlton. I mean, to go up there this time of year, and they have the Beavers there, so I guess we couldn't go duck hunting.
I was going to ask you which tastes better, a duck or beaver, but I'm sure you might know the answer. When you look at Oklahoma City Regional, Oklahoma State, you have UConn, Nebraska, and you have Harvard. I thought Harvard was too smart to have time to play baseball. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, you know, former President Bush played baseball at Harvard. I mean, they've always had a great program down there. But Oklahoma State, you really got to be proud of that program. Both the men and women are in the College World Series playoff.
In the College World Series playoff. What about another school that's really on the rise out of Lubbock, Texas, the Lubbock Regional? You have number 1 Texas Tech, and followed by DBU, number 3 Florida, and then number 4 Army West Point, Big C. But Texas Tech, we talk about Virginia, and they've had success winning multiple national championships, starting with basketball. But now Texas Tech, that seems to be a program, you would think they're known for their football prowess, but they're making noise in basketball and also baseball. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you think about the dominance of Texas, Charlton, in multi-sports. Everybody's always thought about them as a football state. But the baseball teams down there, Charlton, have always been national powers at the University of Texas. And now we see what Texas Tech Red Raiders are doing, Charlton, in basketball and football.
Yep, that's a very good program down there. Fayetteville Regional, and we talked about some of the flooding going on throughout the South and just and just be aware of where your neighbors are. But you have number 1 seed Arkansas, number 2 California. I would like to beg the difference. I think California should be above Arkansas, but that's just my opinion. You have TCU number 3 and Central Connecticut, and their Central Connecticut State in number 4 seed. Give me your thoughts on that, Big C.
Well, evidently you don't know the alphabet. A comes before C in the alphabet, so that's the reason why Arkansas gets that number 1 ranking. But as you look at it, Charlton, you've constantly named off teams from California and from the state of Texas getting high seeds here in the playoffs.
Yep, they have been getting high seeds, Big C, so that's good for West Coast sports. You look at the Oxford Regionals. Number 1, Ole Miss. Number 2, Illinois. Number 3, Clemson. Number 4, Jacksonville State. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, a lot of Southern flair going on down there, Charlton. You talk about Clemson, Jacksonville State. Those teams, Charlton, Clemson national champions in football, trying to duplicate that in baseball.
They're trying to do it as well, Big C. Baton Rouge Regional. LSU, and then Arizona State also from the West Coast. Number 3, Southern Miss. Number 4, Stony Brook. Again, A comes before L. Why isn't Arizona State ranked above LSU? Oh, they're in Baton Rouge. I'm sorry, Big C. Your thoughts?
They're in Baton Rouge where the mosquitoes is part of the state bird down there, Charlton. It's going to be real humid down there, so those boys from the desert that are used to that dry heat might wilt their way down there in that humidity in Louisiana.
Well, that humidity is something else for the West Coast boys. We'll see what happens. Athens Regional, number 1, Georgia. 2, Florida Atlantic. 3, Florida State. Number 4, Mercer. How does Mercer end up on Alabama's football schedule every now and then, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, it's one of those play games. The thing you got to be thankful, you got to look at, Charlton, with some special resignation here, is Florida State, their 42nd consecutive trip to the College World Series, Charlton.
Yeah, they're amazing. I love that program. Nashville Regional, number 1, Vanderbilt. Number 2, Indiana State. Number 3, McNeese State. And then number 4, the Ohio State Buckeyes. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, getting a little representation from the SWAC with McNeese State, Charlton, being in there, Vanderbilt, the Commodores, one of those high academic institutions. So this will be a game of strategy in that region.
Yes, it will be a game of strategy for sure. And you have Morgantown Regional. West Virginia, coal mine country. Number 2, Texas A&M. Number 3, Duke. Number 4 is Fordham. Big C, your thoughts?
It's becoming a common theme, Charlton. I keep hearing teams from Texas pop up in all of these regionals.
Yeah, Texas plays good baseball, Big C. But I think when you look at having that, if you're in the Greenville Regional, East Carolina, North Carolina State, Campbell, and then number 4, Quinnipiac, I love how they have those regional teams staying home as opposed to going across the country, Big C, at least for the top seed. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, that's great for fanfare. You want to reward the teams that have played well to keep them close to home so the fans can get a chance to enjoy what that team has done all year long.
Louisville Regional, number 1, Louisville. Number 2, Indiana. Number 3, Illinois State. And number 4 is UCI. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, they're bringing all those teams from the Midwest down to Louisville. Hopefully they don't get their hands slippery on that Kentucky Fried Chicken and be able to hold that back.
You're saying they fry the food. Haven't they learned it's better baked, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, who cares about the health in the South? Such great athletes, you can run it off.
That's funny. Starkville Regional, Mississippi State, Miami, Central Michigan, and Southern U. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, you got Miami. They've always been a baseball maven down there. You talk about them, you talk about Florida State, the University of Florida, Charlton. It's been great representation from the Power 5 conferences in these selection committees.
That's very true. One of the teams that when you think about success, a high academic standard, maybe the highest on the West Coast, with Stanford. In the Stanford Regional, you have Stanford University. Number 2, UC Santa Barbara. Number 3, Fresno State. Number 4, Sacramento State. And I know over the years, Fresno State and Stanford have won national championships. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you see Santa Barbara has also won a national championship, Charlton. So you got 3 universities in that regional. I guess the little Botuck Sacramento State is the only weak sister of the bunch.
No other state capital.
You got 3 of the 4 teams in that regional, Charlton, that have hoisted the World Series champion on the college level, Charlton.
That means that Sacramento State might be next, Big C. Chapel Hill Regional, North Carolina State, Tennessee, Liberty. Give me Liberty. And then UNCW, Big C, number 4. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, you got a bunch of good old boys playing in that regional area tournament, Charlton. You know, I don't see the national championship coming out of there, but just great for baseball.
Speaking of a program, and in the Atlanta regionals, at least in Atlanta, you know they're going to most likely play in the new facilities. You have Georgia Tech, number 2, Auburn, number 3, Florida A&M, and number 4, Coastal Carolina, who I believe also played Alabama in a football game. Big for your thoughts.
Well, Charlton, that sounds almost like a Final Four matchup
Yeah.
when you look at it in basketball. But all those teams are going to be regionally set, Charlton. The city of Atlanta has always hosted some great events. We think about the Super Bowl that was just there. We had the Olympics in 1996 with the great Muhammad Ali lighting the torch, Charlton.
Yeah.
World Series appearances by the Atlanta Braves out of that city. So just a great city for college football, basketball, baseball. We also had that national championship game at Auburn, in the University of Alabama and Georgia just 2 years ago.
Yeah, just a couple of years ago. So it's always great. And I wish all these college programs the very best. And they can pursue their dreams. It's just a matter of winning where you are. And if you get the chance to play in the major leagues, that's another great thing. When we think about the Major League Baseball, American League's best record. In the East, you have the Yankees. Big C, they're 35-18. In the Central, you have the Minnesota Twins, 36-17. And out West, I thought Texas was more like Southwest, but they're in the West. But the Houston Astros at 36-19. And that team is looking like they're going to at least get back to the ALCS. If not, they'll get close to it. Big C, give me your thoughts.
Well, Charlton, I'm really surprised and proud of the Minnesota Twins, Charlton, who have the best record in the major leagues. If you think about what the Yankees have done, Charlton, with all the injuries that they've had this year, they put 12 players on the IR thus far this season, and they've stayed in being competitive in the best record in the East.
Yeah, and I want to get your feelings. We know we got to get to October because it doesn't matter what anybody says. Unlike people saying they know what's going on inside the Laker organization, because someone gave them a phone call. It's like getting a haircut. You got to be there to get it. You can't just have someone tell you over the phone that it was a good haircut. Would you consider that Houston still has maybe the upper hand on the Yankees because they've been in the World Series more recently than the Yankees? Or are the Yankees destined because, what do they have, like 27 World Series championships in their history? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the Yankees have always been a team of moxie and discipline, Charlton.
Yeah.
They've always run close to the best. You got to think about what they've been able to do with all the injuries they've had this year. Houston is hanging in there in the West, Charlton. They're a solid organization. They've had some problems, earlier in the year that seem to be catching their strides. But once the Yankees get healthy, Charlton, they're going to be a horse. And you think about it, this is a team that won over 100 games in the major leagues last year. They had the best record in all of Major League behind the Boston Red Sox last year.
Do you like the Minnesota Twins? They're a small market in Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota. And they obviously do not have the fanfare that the Yankees have or that the Astros have. And I love the Yankees just because the Yankees are baseball. Just like the Cowboys are football. I know people may not agree with that, but they're synonymous with the sports. You're feeling Minnesota, can they even compete? I know they cannot do it media-wise, but do they have what it takes this year to get through? Your thoughts?
They've been competing, Charlton. What they've done is they've dumped that high salary roster. They have players out there that are playing that are hungry. And that's going to become the new face of baseball in the next 2 to 3 years. You're not going to see these huge contracts giving out to the old veteran players anymore. Minnesota is doing it right. They've been in a rebuilding process the last 2 years, Charlton. The young players that they have in the organization understand what they're doing, and they're delivering on the mound.
That's a very good point. In the National League Best, the East, Philadelphia Phillies, 31-22. It's not because of Bryce Harper. They've had a solid team. In the Central, the Cubs are 30-22. And in the West, the Dodgers are 36-18. The Dodgers they're like the New England Patriots of the West Coast for football. Or maybe I won't even say the Golden State Warriors because they haven't won. But they're like the Houston Rockets of the NBA. They're a team that everyone says is going to win it. They have the pitching, they have the talent, they have Chavez Ravine and all that Dodger mystique. But they keep coming up short, Big C. They haven't done it since 1988, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, they made some roster moves in the offseason, Charlton. They got rid of a couple of disgruntled veteran players and other players that stepped up. They took Cody Bellinger, took him from first base, put him out in right field when they got rid of Yasiel Puig, and his game has really stepped up. He's in the MVP conversation, Charlton. He's already has 7 assists from the outfield, where last year he only had 3.
Yeah.
So this team has been much improved, Charlton, with the roster move that Martinez has made, the manager, and they're a much more solid organization.
Yeah, they are a solid organization. So I look forward with the Phillies. I got to get your feeling on the Phillies because there was so much anticipation on where Harper would end up. He's not the reason that Phillies win in Big C. Give me your feeling. Do they think they overpaid? They were going to be good without him. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, they made a lot of off-season acquisitions that the Phillies did. They brought in 5 veteran players that have delivered within the lineup, and so that's what you need. Baseball is a team game.
Yeah.
You always look for the one highlight guy, and that's what Bryce Harper was brought in for, to be the highlight guy,
yeah,
to take the pressure off of everybody else. But the rest of the team has responded as you expected, and they've gone out and been productive, and they're in first place in the East.
Yeah, I think that's a very true statement, Big C. So when we think about Chicago, there's no more Harry Carey, but that legend of Harry Carey lives on. Baseball is always better when the Cubs are winning. And I would love to see the Cubs because they have that big C on their helmet, I would love to see them get back to the World Series, at least NLCS. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, just about 6 weeks ago, I think people in the media were calling for Joe Madden to be fired in Chicago.
Crazy.
Because they'd gotten off to a sluggish start. But, as you say, pump your brakes, and all of a sudden now they're back in first place in the Central Division. The Cubs need to pick up a closer. That's been their Achilles heel, is their bullpen.
Yep.
If they can pick up a closer, Charlton, they're going to solidify the Central Division.
Well, I really like the Chicago Cubs. Major League Baseball on schedule tonight. A lot of games already underway. San Diego at the New York Yankees. Pittsburgh at Cincinnati. Detroit at Baltimore. St. Louis at Philadelphia. Really got to get those Blues playing better on the ice. Cleveland at Boston. Toronto at Tampa Bay. San Francisco at Miami. Crazy. It's cold in San Francisco. They go to Miami and they play in the Dome more. It's beautiful. Washington at Atlanta. Chicago Cubs at Houston. Kansas City at Chicago. Milwaukee at Minnesota. My goodness, I'm sure Milwaukee's really sad what happened to their basketball team. They'll have to come back next year. Arizona at Colorado. Texas at Seattle. The LA Angels at Oakland. Big C, Oakland's won 10 in a row. The Mets at the LA. And I'm just telling you, there's something about a small market in Oakland, and again, Kansas City at the White Sox. Oakland's won 10 in a row, Big C. Unlike some of the teams that thought they had to overspend, they have one of the smallest payrolls in Major League Baseball. How are they winning 10 in a row? Your thoughts?
Charlton, that's been the history of the Billy Bean out there in Oakland, to not overpay players, but let players work their way up through the system, and that's what they've done. I think the biggest motivation with the A's right now is the Warriors, Charlton, is that you don't want to take second seat, in that city. You want to be the best team in the city right now during the month of May and June.
Yeah, well, they've definitely done it. So I know we talk about a lot on the Big C Sports Show, and you can follow Big C Sports every Monday through Friday at 6 p.m. on the iHeartRadio network, on Apple Podcast, on Google Podcast, on Spreaker. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Comcast Xfinity. And if you have Alexa in your house, just say, Alexa, play Big C Sport Podcast, and it will come up from the iHeartRadio network. Big C, on this date, May 28th, 1986, the NBA, Larry Bird wins his 3rd straight NBA MVP award, joining former Celtic, the great Bill Russell, great Wilt Chamberlain, as the 3rd player to win 3 straight NBA MVP awards. Give me your feeling on how great the great Larry Bird was. Your thoughts?
Larry helped change the landscape of basketball in the early 80s, Charlton. And you think about the rivalry he had with Magic Johnson that went back to college at Indiana State and Michigan State. And many people don't realize Larry Bird was originally recruited by Bobby Knight at the University of Indiana. He transferred out of there and went to Indiana State.
Yeah.
But once he came into the NBA, and he just changed the landscape of how people look at white basketball players all over again. I mean, Isaiah Thomas even said that and got a lot of vitriol back from the media, saying that Larry got the recognition he did because he was white. If he was black, he'd have just been another player in the NBA, which was probably true at the time. But the rivalry that you had, East Coast, West Coast, the Lakers and Boston, and the Lakers had never beaten the Boston Celtics in a championship series until that series got that rivalry between Magic Johnson and Larry Bird. Larry Bird beat him the first time out when they met up in the finals. Magic took the next 2 of them, Charlton.
Yep.
But, what he did for basketball, the two of those players revitalizing basketball, making it a primetime sport instead of a tape-delayed sport, was just great. They were both great ambassadors for the game.
I thought that was great. And speaking about the game, with the NBA draft coming up in June, would you believe the Toronto Raptors make the NBA Finals for the first time ever without having a top 10 draft pick, not even playing 1 minute during this playoff run? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charles, and that's a segue to the draft when you think about it. Everybody's crying about who's going to be the first player and how he's going to change the landscape of this league. And you just spoke about the Toronto Raptors. They got 12 guys on the bench, Charles, 12 guys on the team. Not one player was a top 10 pick on the Toronto Raptors. When you think about a team making the NBA Finals,
amazing.
Not one player was a top 10 pick in the NBA draft.
Yeah.
So as everybody drools over that next savant that's coming out of college, that's going to change the way that everybody plays basketball in the NBA. Look at the teams that are in the final.
Yeah.
Neither one of these teams have an overall number 1 pick in the NBA draft. You think about that. And I don't think either one of them have a top 5 pick. I know Steph Curry was a 7th round pick.
Yep.
I mean, the seventh pick in the first round. So as you think about that, you make the NBA Finals without having the number 1 pick overall in the NBA draft. LeBron James was the last one to win a title that was a number 1 overall pick.
Yeah, it's about teamwork. It's about how you play together. It's about chemistry and going out and getting it. I know we're looking forward to the NBA Finals that will tip off on Thursday from Canada. But I'm sure the Golden State Warriors will have something for them. The Splash Brothers will be in town. Big C, back in the day, there was a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young man, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, Charlton, I'm looking forward to the St. Louis Blues. I'm hoping that they can go back in and they can reshuffle the deck and get a win under their belt, Charlton. You're 0-13 in Stanley Cup playoff finals. That's not a record that anybody wants to be hanging over their head.
No, they don't want that hanging over their head. And we know when something's hanging over your head, you got to be careful, unless it's a mistletoe, Big C, because then that can be more enjoyable when you have a mistletoe hanging over your head. But what we want to tell you is we love what we do. We still want to thank all of our veterans for Memorial Day. You can follow Big C Sports every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the number 1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the number 1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, as we always tell you, there's never, ever an excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.